Welcome, welcome, welcome to Crossroads and Catalysts, the podcast with Shanita B. I am your host, and this is where we discuss the right perspective at a crossroads can be the catalyst for change. So today is my first full episode, and it is dedicated to giving you an introduction to me so that you know what you're getting into. I decided to do this podcast because I thought that it was important to share what I know, and what better forum to do that than in a podcast so that people can have the opportunity to go back and listen to something that you've said because it just might be very helpful. So, since this is the first broadcast, or excuse me, podcast, I'm just going to, like I said, give you some background. I am a native Oklahoman. I have been in Oklahoma all of my life, with the exception of a small stint right outside of college when I lived in Texas. And I received my first job, my first professional job in Texas. And I eventually moved back to Oklahoma and worked for another organization before I branched out on my own and became an entrepreneur. So I have owned a daycare. I have done real estate investing. I've also uh, done tax preparation because I also have my CPA license. And then eventually I went back to school and got an MBA degree. Part of my characteristics, my personality, I'm usually pretty quiet. So this is definitely something different for me, whereby I am being open in a forum like this where many people can have access to me to some degree. So that's different and new, and I like it. And I'm a listener and I'm analytical. But most importantly, one of the things that I think is important to know is that I am a believer in Jesus Christ. I'm a born again believer, and my worldview is informed by the Bible. And I think as a result of that, that has definitely helped me to navigate some of the crossroads that I've encountered in my own personal and professional life. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm able to go out on a limb and move forward with this podcast. So I really do appreciate that you have tuned in and that you're willing to give me some of your time. So, what is it uh, that made me decide to do a podcast? Well, I would say that there are several things. Number one, because I am a listener, as I've already mentioned, I just like to hear people dialogue and talk about a variety of topics. And so I thought that it would be really cool if I threw my hat in the ring, because somebody out there might want to actually listen to something that I have to say. And I think I can honestly say that some of the people that I've encountered over the years have really given me an ear, and they've also asked for my advice and my counsel. And I think that it's really been helpful and gone a long way. So why not share that information with other people? But I can tell you that one of the reasons why I started this podcast was because I recently faced a crossroad. And again, I think all of us have been there before. Maybe you're feeling stuck. Maybe you just don't know what to do. You don't really have anyone close to you who you think can give you some reasonable or decent counsel, which all of those things are important. But I can tell you, just like I mentioned in my teaser, I think I'm in a really good place. I'm really happy because I just made a change, and I'm really settling into this new change that has occurred. And I was in a position at an organization where I had worked for almost a dozen years, and it was a good ride. I met some really good people. I have good friends to this day that I met at that organization. So I am grateful for the opportunities that I had there. But I knew that it was time for me to go because of some things that had recently taken place. And I had worked in one department for, I don't know, about 7 or 8 years. And I knew that I was not going to be able to progress any further without moving. And so I applied for another job in a different entity within the organization, and I was offered a position. And so I took it, which was really good. And so I was going to be learning another aspect of the organization, which is pretty cool. And I was going to be meeting new people and interacting in a whole new way. And it was definitely going to give me some visibility to other people across the organization. So I thought that that was pretty good too. And lo and behold, about 7 months in, the person who hired me, who was the CFO, she resigned to take another position somewhere else. So that was a little disappointing, of course, because I was really hoping to work a little more closely with her just to glean some of the knowledge and expertise that she had gained over the course of her career, but it just didn't work out that way. But before she left, she had worked with me long enough to where she felt like she had truly assessed my work ethic and my performance. And she and the CFO, they asked me to serve in the interim as the interim CFO. And definitely I was blown away, but I also thought that it was a great opportunity for me to really gain a little bit more information about that particular role and the organization. So I did it, and I did it for about 6 months. I was encouraged to apply for the role, and I did. I went through the interview process. I was not offered the job, and I was not totally dissatisfied with that outcome. Again, I had just been in, I had only been in that role for about 7 months. And it's not that I could not do the role. I just was not sure that I really wanted to do the role. And so when they decided on someone else, it didn't hurt my feelings too badly. Of course, there's always some disappointment, especially if you have a little bit of a competitive nature. You want to win, even if you don't really want it, you want to win. And I did ask, hey, what was it that you were looking for, or why didn't I get the position? And it came down to experience. Well, that's just simply on paper, of course. But again, no big deal. Time goes on. Person that they hired, we got along great. But that person, lo and behold, uh, turns out some things came up with their family, and it was difficult for them to meet the needs of their family because of the way that this role was structured. They were remote. And so it was a little bit of a stressor and a frustration point for the family. So he was in that job for 1 year. And what happened? I was asked again to serve in that role. And I did for another 6 months. Again, I was encouraged to apply for the role, and I did once again. And this time, I think that everyone was a little more acutely aware that maybe we have something going on. Well, I say that. I probably was the only one who thought it was rather odd that there have been two CFOs in this role over the course of about a year and a half or 3 years. And I think even before that, the former person or persons in that role, they weren't there for very long either. Anyhow, uh, once it came down to it, meeting was scheduled. I went to the meeting, and what I was told was, well, we're going to continue our search. And that was how the news was broken to me that I did not get the job. And this person went on to tell me what a fantastic job that I had done and how grateful they were and how everyone had really good things to say about me, which at that point it meant nothing to me because there was no reason given to me as to why I was not offered the position. And so I just cut straight to it and said, hey, it's great that everyone thinks that I did a good job and that you have all of these nice things to say and all these accolades, but that's not actionable information. I can't take that information and make adjustments as to what I need to do in order to progress. And I was told, well, go and talk to such and such. So I was deferred to someone else, which I, for me, that was unacceptable. And so I knew at that point that there was probably nowhere for me to go within that organization. I felt like my career was at a dead end. And so I made a decision at that point that it's time for me to find another job. Well, it took a long time to find a job. And I had a couple of different interviews with, well, a couple of interviews with two different organizations, and I progressed through the interview stages. And these were excellent interviews, and I didn't think that there was any reason why I would not be selected. Of course, I knew that there were no guarantees that I would, but if you know who you are and you are able to read a room, you recognize when things are going well and when things are not going so well. And I had a pretty good feeling about those interviews, but of course, there's always that level of uncertainty. And those jobs did not pan out. And I knew that I had to continue to move forward, and it was a struggle because I was going to work every day at an organization that I did not feel really valued the work that I was doing to the point to where they would progress me. And so I also had to make a decision that I needed to take ownership of my own career and that it was not up to anyone else to do it for me. I had had several really good conversations with the hiring manager. Um, and ultimately, I did, address this person and I let them know what I thought about what had occurred. And I was ready to submit my resignation. And at that point, I did not have a job lined up. And I did that considering very carefully my finances, where I was, how I could get along if I didn't find a job, within the very near future. So I already had that planned out as to what I would do and how I would do it. Little did I know how long it would take for me to actually find another job. And for those who are searching, I definitely feel your pain because it's not always a quick and easy process. And you're fighting algorithms and you're going against people who might know people on the inside. It is not an easy process. But again, going back to a conversation that I had had with the hiring manager, I thought it was very substantial and it came down to, well, please just reconsider, and I will pour resources into developing you. Well, again, it still didn't answer the question as to why I wasn't offered the job in the first place. So I don't know how you develop someone if you haven't told them where they need to develop. So there were some things that were good and there were some things that were unsatisfactory, but I made the decision that I would stay. And I was very clear and upfront that I still don't know why I'm here and I don't know how long I will be here. But I appreciated the fact that this person was willing to work with me and they at least listened to what I had to say, even if it didn't result in the outcome that I would have preferred. And ultimately, because I had this in the back of my mind that I controlled my own career and that I was the one who was responsible to make these changes, I was settled in my mind that I'm okay. I can show up to work every day and I can continue to perform uh, to the capabilities that God has given me solely because of who God is. Because God is the one who will ultimately be pleased or displeased with the actions that I take. And I want God to be pleased. And so, kind of my philosophy is I serve the Lord and others are the benefactors of my work. And it doesn't matter to me that these people may not deserve or the organization may not deserve, the great performance. God is the one who's going to judge that in the end. And I think what it came down to is I had to live with the choice that I made. And I had to be, not had to be, I guess, but there was a part of me that believes that you should be joyful despite the circumstances. And you might not be happy every day, but there is something that you can find to be grateful about every day. And that was what I did. And I had a really good friend who worked right across the hall from me. And so we used to chat pretty frequently. And we would often encourage one another when we weren't always feeling our best. And so that helped me a lot to get through that. But definitely it was prayer and just trying to have an overall good attitude because I don't believe in walking around with a bad attitude. Well, how does that relate to this podcast? Well, I was a leader still. And so I needed to set an example for my team. And it wasn't necessarily me faking anything. It was just me deciding to move forward and to do my best. Because number one, I don't like to submit bad work. I don't like to do bad work. So that might be part of some vanity that I have. But again, I wanted to do work that was honoring to the Lord so that if anybody asked, how were you able to make it through those circumstances? Or, what did you do? What did you think as you were experiencing that? I can always point back to the faith that I had uh, in my Lord, because otherwise I would have walked up out of there and not said a word to anybody and just not shown up. And I don't think that that was the example that I was supposed to set for anyone, because there were a number of people who were relying upon me to lead them and to walk them through their work. Because I had an important role, and I do believe that I had an important role. And this is not to disparage anyone at the organization or the organization itself. It's just one of those scenarios whereby you recognize the writing is on the wall And I had people in my life that I could call, specifically my father. I would call him and just ask him, well, what do you think about this? And my dad is pretty straightforward, very logical as well. He's like, well, you just have to think about what it is that you're going to gain or maybe what it is that you're going to lose. And there's not a right or wrong answer to that. And I decided, okay, I'll stick around for this short period of time, realizing that there may be an opportunity outside of this organization. And if it becomes available, I'll take it. And like I said, it took quite a long time. Overall, it was probably 2 years from the start from when that first CFO left. That last one, when I felt like it really mattered, it took me 9 months to find another job. 9 months. That's a long time when you're submitting numerous resumes. And I don't just submit the same resume to, every organization. I tailor fit my resume for these organizations for based on the job description. So it's hard out here, y'all. And I definitely understand what that's like. But I'm now, I think, in a much better place. And I think that there's a level of appreciation that has been shown to me that I don't even know that I can say that I've ever experienced it. And it's given me an opportunity to continue to learn. And it's also given me an opportunity to share what I have learned over the years and apply it. And, there's a lot to be gleaned from this one story because I could have taken that crossroad and I could have, as soon as I was told that I was not going to be offered the position, I could have gotten angry. I could have, really gotten upset with that person. And I could have really changed the course of my life and my career because of one disappointment. And I'm grateful now, thinking back, that I didn't do probably what I wanted to do on the inside. And I was purposeful and intentional in how I approached it. And part of the reason is because of my faith. But another reason is because I think that I had some really wise people around me who were very encouraging and they were very reasonable and logical. And they wanted to see me succeed. And it worked out. It didn't work out when I thought that it would. It didn't work out the way that I thought that it would, but it still worked out. And I'm still winning. That's really what it comes down to. I'm still winning. And so this is kind of the basis for this podcast. And it's not simply for those who are trying to climb the corporate ladder. This is for those people who are just starting in their career, or you're deciding what career path is best for you to work for someone or to work for yourself. Because again, since I've been on both sides of the track as far as being an entrepreneur and an employee, I don't know that I can say one is any better than the other. They are both going to take a lot out of you, and they both require commitment. Now, there might be a certain level of freedom that goes along with being an entrepreneur, but you're going to pay for it. And, freedom is not free. And that's almost universal. You're going to pay for it some kind of way. So this is to encourage you that there is no right or wrong way to do it. There's no right or wrong path. There's no right or wrong way to go about your career. But you want to be sound. You want to be logical. You want to have people around you who can offer you some insight. I used to tell my daughter, and I still tell her this occasionally. If you want to know how to bake a cake, you go to a baker. You don't go to the landscape person. You want to go to the people who know how to do it. And sometimes your peers are not the ones who know how to do that. I just want you to take a step back and not make decisions that are going to change your life for the bad. You want to carefully go through things and think them through and not be rash in your decision making. And so ultimately, what should you take away from my experience? Well, you want to be realistic because I think oftentimes it's easy to think that you have the competencies, the skill set, the abilities to do a job. that may not necessarily be a fit for you, or maybe you haven't done it long enough to be proficient at it. So be open to constructive feedback, not necessarily criticism, because I think that criticism is not is mean spirited somewhat. So be realistic about your skill set. Be accountable. Again, I had to take ownership of my career and recognize that it was not up to someone else uh, to promote or demote me. I had to make the decision, and I knew that if I waited around, it might not ever happen. And for sure, this person told me, well, it might be a couple of years. Well, in my estimation, a couple of years was too long to do something that I had already done for a year at that point. So make a decision and be accountable for your own career. And don't allow other people to tell you when you can and cannot do something. You have to get out there and you have to build the skill and you have to build the competencies so that you can get the job done. Be persistent. By being persistent, whether you decide to stay the course where you are or move somewhere else, you're going to have to stick to it and persevere to get through that, because again, it might not be as quick and easy as you think that it will. I thought that I would have another job within about a few months. That's pretty standard. 9 months is a long time to wait to get a new job, especially after you have submitted numerous resumes. I had made a commitment to myself that I would submit a couple of resumes every day, and I did, and I got a lot of dear John form letters. Oh, we've decided on another candidate. You all know how that goes. Be tempered. Don't make rash decisions, because I think most of us recognize now that a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck anyway. If you walk out on your job, it's only going to take you about 2 weeks before you run out of money. And some people are better savers than others, but most are not. So just really carefully consider your obligations before you make a rash decision out of emotion. And I know that that might be easier said than done. I think that my circumstances were slightly unique because I worked with who I think are really good people, and people who listen to me even if they didn't deliver upon what I think should have, been the result. Really, that's the only way for me to say that. And you know, be upfront about what you want to do. If you're working at an organization, tell whoever your leader is what you would like to do. Have an answer, have a response for the question that is asked. Where do you see yourself in a few years? And because I think a lot of, especially larger companies, they're trying to make the effort to grow people and move them up. And if you work for other decent people, they're going to do what they can to see you grow, because that's what I did. I wanted to help the people who worked under my leadership. I wanted to help them grow. So just consider some of these things. Um, and when we come back again, of course, we'll have plenty of things to talk about, as we go through this show. But I want you to be aware that I am here to encourage you, because you can do a good job. You can grow your career, whether that career is self-made via entrepreneurship or you're in a corporate setting and you want to continue to progress to provide for yourself and your family, whatever the case may be, it can be done. So we're going to end there. We have come to the conclusion of our episode. And I just want to remind you to, stick with me, listen, subscribe, and share. And we'll be in touch soon. And just remember that every decision calls for action, and every challenge fuels the journey. Just keep moving. Until next time.